Welcome to the campus of North Idaho College and this evening's broadcast of the North Idaho College Public Forum. The crew is comprised of North Idaho College television students. Your moderator is North Idaho College political scientist Tony Stewart.
Tonight we will deal with the historical and contemporary issues of Vietnam. After 14 years of the United States involvement in South Vietnam, Saigon fell to the North Vietnamese on April the 29th, 1975. From that date until the present time, there has been a united North and South Vietnam under the leadership of the communist regime from Hanoi. As to statistics concerning that country, Vietnam has a population of approximately 48 million people on a land surface of 130,654 square miles. As to agricultural and industrial production, in the past Vietnam has been known for its agricultural production of rice mainly, but also some sweet potatoes, timber, corn, and seafood in particular. As to industry production in the past, Vietnam has had coal, cement, salt, electricity, and has a potential of petroleum production for exports in the future, as well as her neighbor China. As to major export centers for the Vietnamese people, they have been in the past the United States, the People's Republic of China, the Soviet Union, Singapore, and Japan. At the present time, the United States' involvement with trade in that country has been mostly eliminated after the fall of Saigon in April 1975. In order to deal with this subject this evening, I would like to welcome to our program Dr. Lin Van Nguyen, who has a PhD in the field of philosophy. He also holds a baccalaureate degree in that field. Upon coming to the United States in May 1975, Dr. Nguyen also returned to education, where he went to Eastern Washington University and received a master's degree in the field of French from that institution. Prior to his coming to the United States, Dr. Nguyen is best known probably for his work in two areas. First of all, he served as the personal secretary to the President of Vietnam from 1952 to 55. Van Nguyen was the president at that time in that country. Also from 1960 to 1975, he was a professor of French literature and philosophy at the University of Saigon. Dr. Nguyen has agreed to come and speak both from the historical viewpoint and contemporary politics and history. Welcome to our program. Yeah. Joining with me in questioning our guests this evening are three members of the panel. First of all is a regular panelist, Lou Reed, NIC instructor Roger Burr, and a Spokane visitor to our show, Lon Woodbury. Welcome, panel.
Thank you.
We'll proceed to questions at once, and the first series will come from Mary Lou Reed.
Dr. Lin, I'd like to pursue a little bit more about your own personal background. As I understand it, the first president of South Vietnam, when you were secretary, was your uncle, Mr. Tam. And following his presidency was the Diem regime. And during that time, you worked for Madame Nhu, is that correct?
Yeah, it's a kind of work because I taught her daughter, in private.
I'm sure you're aware of the image that Madame Nhu had in the United States, and many times she was referred to as the Dragon Lady. What was she really like?
She was a little arrogant. But the thing is, she had many supporters. I mean, most of women felt very affectionate.
They were loyal. She had a lot of loyal supporters among the women.
Yeah.
Did you feel that she had a sort of a lust for power? This was the image that we were receiving, that she and her husband were trying to undercut the Diem himself and really take over. Did that would you say that was true?
To tell the truth, we think that we have to make a distinction. In the government, in the Diem government, his government lasted from 1956 till his death, 1963. But we had to make this distinction that the first 3 years, and almost for the first 4 years, he got all the people favor. He gained all the people favor.
So he was really very popular at first.
He was very popular.
And then what happened?
But the last years, I think that his brother, Mr. New, broke his popularity because of the totalitarianism.
Because of the police tactics?
Police, yeah.
So what Diem did wrong actually in your eyes was to rely so much upon his brother.
Yeah.
Do you feel, and I'm not sure if this is a fair question, but do you feel if there had a plebiscite had been held in, I believe 1956 was the year that was requested, if the vote had been taken by the people, do you think there would have been reunification or the South Vietnamese separation would have been affirmed? Did Diem make a mistake in not having a plebiscite?
We thought that Diem tried to get a kind of gamble with the communists. First of all, he knew Ho Chi Minh because he should be his mate in the school in his youth. And I suspect, but I'm not sure, that they should get some relation either by mail or by some ambassador.
You mean you think they were in closer communication than was apparent? Diem and Ho Chi Minh
Yeah.
were communicating more than was publicly known?
Yeah, but they got this very secret.
Uh-huh. And so that they agreed to not have a vote?
Pardon me, I don't understand your question.
As I understand, the plebiscite, which would have been a vote by the people, was turned down by Diem as a way of resolving the question of division.
Yeah, the people didn't agree. The policy, the politic of Diem, I mean, with his secret service and with his arrest. But the thing is, the people didn't know his secret ideas about Vietnam's future.
I see. Thank you.
Yeah.
Roger Burr.
Mr. Lin, what is your attitude toward former Premier Nguyen Cao Ky, who I believe lives in the United States,
Yeah.
and former President Thieu, who's living in London, I think? How do you feel toward them? Do you feel any resentment or what? Respect?
I think that I have to separate your question.
Sure.
First of all, toward General Cao Ky, I don't have any resentment. He is now, like me, a refugee. And we, both of us, like many refugees, we were soldiers for liberty. And Cao Ky has suffered also from Thieu. My resentment is very heavy toward Thieu.
Is there any particular reason for that?
One reason, he pushed our people to this kind of ruin.
Would you agree with Nguyen Cao Ky that the problems of the Thieu government were problems of corruption, massive corruption, if you will.
Did Kauki tell that?
Yes, he mentioned that this was a continuing problem in,
Yeah. I agree with him.
in South Vietnam, and especially under Thieu as well.
Yeah. South Vietnam got along, or not in those governments, but many centuries ago, from the time of the emperors. And because South Vietnam was a new country discovered by people who came from north. And so they had to depend on the government from north. Mm-hmm. But after that, they wanted to be independent. They fought a lot, and by any means. So among these means, how about corruption and many things?
Yes. Do you feel at the time of the fall of Thieu that the government in North Vietnam, in Hanoi, that is the government of Ho Chi Minh, was less corrupt than that of Thieu's?
Yes. It was less corrupt.
I see. Okay. You mentioned the fact that both you and Nguyen Cao Ky are refugees. As a group, do you see any serious adjustment problems for Vietnamese refugees when they come to the United States or to Canada? Are there any serious problems of living here for refugees?
Personally, I don't have a real problem. I don't have trouble with that, because I think that each individual must have his way. The first thing we need when we left Vietnam was freedom. And now we got it. We get it. So we have to build. We have to build our life following our capacity and also our willing to work.
To what extent has the U.S. government assisted refugees once they arrive in the U.S.?
The American government?
Yes.
And how about his attitude?
Well, no, the government support for refugees here in the country.
We think very grateful.
Is it financial support?
This very liberal and very great.
Thank you.
Longwood Berry.
Dr. Lin, the question I have like to explain is in 1973, the American involvement directly so far as soldiers ended. Americans left South Vietnamese.
Yes.
And 2 years later, in 1975, was the fall of Saigon. That was a 2-year period. What were some of the reasons why South Vietnam couldn't maintain its independence? Was it the corruption, or was it lack of leadership, or I'd like some of your ideas on that.
Yeah. The thing is, after Diem, all the governments were corrupted. None is very honest, because they have seen that the falling down is coming. And the principal thing they viewed was money, to put in their pocket and to get out of the country.
So you're saying the people lost credibility or respect for the government?
Yes.
Another thing that we heard on the news quite a bit was the Catholics and the Buddhists and the conflict between them. And earlier you had mentioned something about a third front. Could you explain that a little bit more?
Yeah, that happened about 1965. By that time, the Buddhist party, Buddhists and Buddhists first got violence because they felt some frustration, and also because they didn't have their leaders in the government. Because most of the leaders, most of the personalities in all the governments were not Buddhist. So, because of this frustration, this feeling of frustration, they felt frustrated, they got violence. They demand this and that, and also they got riots. First, they made many riots, and some were really bloody in Saigon. But the most bloody were in the center of Vietnam, Hue. But after that, about 1 year after, all the people understood that under this violence from the Buddhists, there were many agents sent by the communists. We got proofs, and these proofs were demonstrated by Cao Kỳ. So because of that, Cao Kỳ had some popularity with the population, with people. I mean, especially about between 1965 and 1968. Because Cao Kỳ showed himself a very good defender of freedom and of any kind of religion against only the communism.
So was he this third front, or this involvement?
Right.
That
And so,
his instigation?
but this is with the population. But the elite, intellectual, I mean, lawyer, doctor, medical doctor, and students, and teachers, we gather, and we organize many meetings to invite both parties, both Buddhist monks and Christian priests. But in Saigon, there were most of the Christians were Catholic, and the Catholic priest, and also these priests work a lot for that, and we got a kind of union, and we push a kind of, we create a kind of movement to go to share all the feast, either Buddhist or Christian. And the thing is, it should be a little funny because by 67, the fashion, we got the fashion that a kind of new fashion is every people can go to the church. They could go to the church and to get mass. And also in Christmas, they don't have any notion of Christianity. They came on, they got the mass, everything.
Dr. Lin, we are rather short on time, and it sounds like that you are saying that both the division in the country among the people, Buddhists and Catholics and others, and because of some corruption in the government and so forth, that those are some of the reasons for the fall of that government. I would like for us to move on to a contemporary question that our viewers, I know, would be interested in.
Okay.
Recently, Vietnam has invaded Cambodia and has apparently overthrown that government. This has seemed to concern the People's Republic of China, but the Soviet Union seems to be supporting Vietnam. I have two questions. First, is it true that the Vietnamese government is more pro-Soviet Union and rather anti the Chinese government? And number two, why did Vietnam invade Cambodia?
Because I left Vietnam almost 4 years now. But the thing is, I have to tell by what I have seen in Vietnam before I left. And to answer to the first question, I think that Vietnam should be really pro-Soviet, in the side of Soviet Russia, because, and especially South Vietnam, because it sounds more Western, and South Vietnam is very influenced by the Western culture, I mean Occidental.
So you think by siding with the Soviet Union against China, that would give them a chance to be more the pro-Western approach?
Yeah.
Okay. Why do you think that the government decided to invade Cambodia, which also had supposedly a communist regime? What's the division over?
I think that this was the solution of the North Vietnam to destroy the young people and all the people they want to destroy in South Vietnam.
Do you think it also they got encouragement from the Soviet Union to do this?
No, this came from North Vietnam government.
Okay. One more question before I return to the panel. Is there a historical explanation, too, for the conflict between Vietnam and China? Has this been a long conflict between the Chinese people and the Vietnamese people, a mistrust between them?
The conflict was its history, but the ancient, antique history. Now, I don't think that if Vietnam is not communist, there won't be a conflict.
I see.
Yeah.
Lou Reed.
Dr. Lin, the big news this week is the arrival in the United States of Deng Xiaoping. Did I say that right?
Deng Xiaoping.
I've been practicing. And as Tony has mentioned, Vietnam is traditionally thought of as a Russian ally. How do you feel the normalization of U.S. relationships with the People's Republic of China will affect Vietnam and the balance of power in Southeast Asia?
I don't feel really fear, and I feel good in one way, because this will make more serious the conflict between Chinese and Russian. One thing. In one other thing, this will make stronger position of United States in Orient, I mean Asia.
Increase our influence in Asia.
Yeah.
A greater involvement. Another word that has come to the front is hegemony. And do you see any of the three important nations, either U.S. Or Russia or China, developing that superiority among, more equal than others among peers in this balance? Do you see one of the three major nations, or maybe one of the four if you include Japan, emerging as a stronger voice than any of the others? Is that a concern?
This is for me very complicated. I don't have really now an opinion.
All right, thank you.
Roger Burr.
What is the reason for so many of the boat people at the moment Why are so many Vietnamese leaving Vietnam at this time, and what do you think should be done for them?
So you have two questions. Why did they leave?
Yes, and
Vietnam?
what should be done for them?
Yeah. First question is very easy to understand. They couldn't suffer the rules, the communist government. How about the camps where they put people to kill them? And so they have to flee. Second question, what can we do for them? The thing is, if they arrive here, I will help them because they are my compatriots. But how about about the American government? It depends on the government. But any help should be good.
Lon Woodbury.
Dr. Lin, you were talking on the invasion of Cambodia. It sounded like you were saying that that was partially a tool by the North Vietnamese to strengthen their hold on South Vietnamese by using South Vietnamese foot soldiers and the mass mobilization of South Vietnamese. Is that correct?
Yes.
Have you heard anything on how successful it's been, or how the South Vietnamese are reacting to it so far as the troops that have been mobilized?
Yeah. The thing is, they mobilized all the the youngsters, but principally, most of them are South Vietnamese. You know, the first year they came here, they tried to get a kind of exchange to send the South Vietnamese, the southern youngster in north, and to get the exchange, the northern youngster from north in south. But now they couldn't get it, and they prefer to send the southern youngster in the battle.
Has there been any kind of riots or desertions or any major opposition on the part of the South Vietnamese?
Yes. So I think that I don't think, but I can hear that there were many desertions, many cases of desertion from these people.
The South Vietnamese?
Yeah, of South Vietnam.
In Cambodia? Or?
In Cambodia. They got some occasion, many, and if they have time and means, they fled to Thailand through Laos.
Could that be a major reason why the fighting's still going on in Cambodia?
Yeah.
It's just that the South Vietnamese or North Vietnamese haven't kept their troops together?
Yeah.
On behalf of our staff, Dr. Lin Van Nguyen, I want to thank you for being on our program. It's been a pleasure and been most informative. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to invite you to be with us again next week at the same time. I am Tony Stewart, and have a good week.
The North Idaho College Public Forum can be seen at this same time each week over this station. This production was videotaped earlier by a North Idaho College student crew for viewing at this more appropriate time.